So we are at 116 North Rockingham Avenue. This is the house where Schoenberg, Arnold Schoenberg lived since 50 something, or was it even earlier than that?
It was earlier. It was moved here in '36, I believe, right?
First he was in New York and in Boston.
Right.
He lived in Hollywood for
And
a
then-
while, for a very short while, West Hollywood, I guess it was. And then got this house where he lived until he died in '51. We, like all the children, thought it was normal, right?
Of course.
But we had parents that spoke to us in German mostly, and we answered in English mostly, and we developed what my father called schönste language, which was a mixture of English and German.
Mm-hmm.
Really, I think it was relatively normal, other than we had a father who was very old.
Actually, you know, I would have liked to have said that we grew up here and we had to learn every one of his works. We had to study 12-tone theory, but in fact, that's probably what most people would have expected. But in fact, it was quite the opposite.
Right.
As you'll find out, that it really was. We grew up as American children, growing up in Los Angeles, of all places.
But there was quite a, maybe not that large, but sort of important circle of emigrants from Germany and Austria after the war. So did the families have a lot to do with each other?
I remember the cellist Feuermann coming here, but that's because his name was Feuermann.
Right.
You know, what could be best for a child than the fireman
Yeah, absolutely.
coming? So did I appreciate the people that were here? Well, we knew the Polish Quartet, but not because it was the Polish Quartet, because it was Uncle Rudy. I think with Klemper, who was here, I mean, I think we always commented about him, about how tall he was and how he had to bend down to get through the arch over here.
Klemper was here a lot. Klemper was,
Yeah.
in a sense, a good friend when they weren't fighting.
Right.
And I always had the feeling he was so tall, and as Larry said, like he would have to stoop to get through the arch, but I always had the feeling that as tall as he was and as short as my father was, that he was actually looking up at my father always.
Optical illusion.
Yeah.
Yes.
Again, from our perspective, at least from my perspective, things that I remember most in the house vis-a-vis people coming over would have been his students. He would bring his composition students here for a class, for a performance.
Right.
Later on, in the very room that we're sitting in, he would have, and this I do remember quite well, and we all remember this, is every Sunday he would have his classes here. And those would be the private classes where there would be 10 or 12 people here, and he would prepare those lessons. I remember clearly him preparing the lessons because he did his preparation on butcher paper, large-sized butcher paper, and then had it all on an easel, and he had designed a staff maker with crayons so that he could make that. And I remember being able to draw the lines. That was my musical
Contribution.
Yeah.
Did you have any kind of idea of your father's position in the world? I mean, how famous he was and how important he was and all that?
Really very little,
Yeah.
because of course here he was not recognized very much at
No.
all. And once in a while, either we would be told that, and at least my feeling was, well, yes, but, you know, I mean, we were California kids.
Fame here has been defined by wealth and popularity, neither of which he had. So there's definitely a contradiction when someone tells you that your father's very famous, and in Los Angeles that wouldn't be defined as being,
Right.
growing up here, that wouldn't be considered famous.
But you didn't see him as a bitter man.
I wouldn't say he wasn't bitter at times. He certainly was bitter at times. You can see that in his writings and things he's known to have said. But he was willing to teach. I mean, if you can imagine somebody whose pupils in Europe were Webern and Berg, and then he's teaching music appreciation to people who are basically in school because they are athletes. It's quite a different
That's a
thing.
fault.
He
That's a fault.
he did have a love of teaching though, and he wanted to give something to everyone he taught, to the extent that when he taught his composition classes, he would give separate examinations for each student based on what that person could or should know.
Right.
He was a great believer that people should learn the basics. There's a story of somebody coming to learn with him, to study with him, and wanting to learn his tricks. That was, the tricks of the trade. And he took him into his study behind us and said, first, you have to learn everything that's in here. I know every note that's in here, and it was the complete works of Beethoven.
Oh, there
First
you
you
go.
learn this, and then we go on from there.
Right.
Well, the music we heard was the music on the radio, and he would listen to that sort of religiously, and always. Larry likes to tell a story. Should I let you tell a story?
No,
How
you
checked to see if they played. If they played Schoenberg, they would have a program of all their coming concerts, and Larry would get paid at 25 cents if he could
It was
find
10 cents.
10 cents if he could find.
Sounds better though.
Find a piece,
25.
look through the thing and find
Either
a piece
way.
by our father that was being played, which happened very frequently.
Either way, I didn't get well.
But that was the music behind you. We had stacks of records that they used to play, and that was my father's music, some of it.
One of the first things they did on 78 recordings, one of the early things was, believe it or not, was Girl-Eater. Now, can you imagine Girl-Eater on 3 minutes aside, or less than 3 minutes, slightly less. Imagine how
6 feet
how
tall
big
a
this
pile.
thing is, and how you're constantly flipping them.
Oh, yes.
I certainly heard more Strauss music than I heard Schoenberg music growing up. So we would have heard an awful lot of Strauss waltzes. I don't know. We must have had little records of those. And
So one starts to think that this was a mind that was almost never completely addressed. There was something going on all the time. Do you experience
Sure.
this?
It was always
well,
very intense,
100 years. It's really 100 years ago. In 1909 is when I think he got a patent for a music typewriter, where he actually designed the technology that one would need to be able to type out a score. So he was always looking for, quote, a better way, a solution.
Everything turned into an invention for him, or turned into some project for him.
So it's not a coincidence that this man was one of the great inventors in all history of music.